What would you do if you walked into a job interview, dressed sharp, ready to prove yourself, only to have the person sitting across the desk refuse to shake your hand? Not because you were late or unprepared, but simply because of the color of your skin. Imagine that moment, the shock, the sting, the silence that fills the room like a heavy weight. This isn't just a story about one awkward handshake. It's about prejudice, assumption, and the quiet battles so many face every day. But here's the twist. When that same executive finally glanced down at the candidate's resume, everything changed. What he saw on that paper wasn't just impressive, it was undeniable. Wait until you hear what was on that resume. This story will make you question what you think you know about racism, and maybe even change how you see the world. Stick with me. My name is James, and I've spent years working in corporate America, witnessing firsthand how the surface of professionalism sometimes hides deep, uncomfortable truths. Today, I want to share a story, not from my own experience, but from someone close to me, someone who faced a moment that still haunts him. Picture this, a sleek glass office in downtown Chicago, the kind of place where the floors gleam under bright fluorescent lights and the walls are lined with awards and framed company values. It's the modern corporate world, fast-paced, competitive, and often unforgiving. The candidate in this story is Michael, a driven and accomplished black man in his early 30s. Michael didn't just stumble into this interview. He earned it through sleepless nights, countless internships, and degrees from some of the best schools. He carried a resume filled with accolades, leadership roles, projects that saved companies millions, and glowing recommendations. This job wasn't just another paycheck for Michael. It was a chance to break through barriers, to prove that hard work and talent could overcome the unspoken walls built by bias and discrimination. And yet, as he stepped into that corporate office, ready to shake hands and start the conversation, none of that mattered. To the man waiting for him behind that desk, Michael's journey to that interview room wasn't an easy one. Growing up in a working-class neighborhood on the south side of Chicago, he had seen firsthand how opportunities could be limited, not because of lack of talent or ambition, but because of the color of one's skin. His parents worked long hours. His mother cleaned offices at night, and his father worked construction during the day, always emphasizing the importance of education. "Your mind is your most valuable asset," his father used to say, "and no one can take that away from you." Michael took those words seriously. He studied late into the night, often with a dim lamp lighting the cramped room he shared with his younger sister. Scholarships helped him get through high school and into a respected university where he majored in business administration with honors. But school was just the beginning. To pay for his tuition, he worked part-time jobs, waiting tables, tutoring underclassmen, anything he could do to ease the financial burden on his family. Beyond academics and work, Michael was also a mentor in his community. He volunteered at local youth centers, helping kids navigate the very challenges he had faced. His dream was clear, to one day step into the corporate world, not just for himself, but to open doors for others who looked like him. Now, fast forward to the day of the interview. The white executive waiting behind the mahogany desk was Mr. Thompson, a man known throughout the company as decisive, sharp, and a bit old school, tall and impeccably dressed, with a silver-streaked hairline and a gaze that could unsettle even the most confident candidates. While outwardly professional, Michael had heard stories from others about Thompson's tough management style and sometimes offhand remarks that hinted at a certain discomfort with diversity in the workplace. As Michael was led into the room, He noticed subtle things right away. Thompson didn't stand to greet him. He barely glanced up from his papers. His handshake, when it finally came, was quick, almost dismissive, and, as Michael soon realized, refused altogether. The executive's eyes flicked over Michael's suit and skin, in a way that wasn't quite welcoming. The tension in the room was palpable, though unspoken. Michael's heart pounded, not because of nerves about the job, but because he sensed that the real interview was not about skills or experience, but something far more personal. The subtle narrowing of Thompson's eyes, the slight leaning back in his chair, the clipped tone of his voice, all foreshadowed a conflict that would test Michael's resilience far beyond the typical interview. Michael reminded himself to stay calm. This was his moment, and no matter what, he would not let prejudice define his worth. The moment Michael extended his hand to greet Mr. Thompson, everything shifted. Thompson didn't move. His hand stayed planted firmly on the polished mahogany desk. For a brief second, Michael thought maybe the executive was caught off guard, maybe tired or distracted. But then Thompson's eyes met his, cold and unreadable, and the refusal became clear. No handshake. The room grew heavy with silence. It was the kind of silence that roars loudest in your ears. Michael felt the sting, not just on his skin, but deep inside, where pride and hope usually lived. His mind raced, searching for an explanation, a reason. Was this some kind of test, a joke, or something worse? His hand hung mid-air for a moment longer before slowly retreating. The warmth and connection he'd expected vanished, replaced by a wall thicker than any door. Michael swallowed hard, but didn't let his expression betray him. He kept his voice steady, professional. "Good morning, Mr. Thompson. Thank you for meeting with me today." Thompson nodded curtly, but said nothing in response. His gaze flicked down to the resume in front of him, then back up, avoiding Michael's eyes. Michael's heart pounded, but his face remained composed. Inside, a whirlwind of confusion and hurt swirled, a clash of disbelief and the quiet, painful awareness that this was not about his qualifications. It was about something else, something far less fair. The air was thick with unspoken judgment. The atmosphere crackled with tension, like electricity before a storm. Michael could almost feel the weight of every stereotype, every assumption pressing down on him in that room. Yet despite it all, Michael stood tall. He knew this moment mattered more than any handshake. This was about showing strength in the face of rejection, dignity in the face of disregard. He took a breath and settled into the chair across from Thompson, ready to prove through words and actions that his worth was undeniable, even if it wasn't immediately seen. The interview began in earnest, but the atmosphere was anything but warm. Mr. Thompson glanced briefly at the resume, then looked back at Michael with an expression that hovered between skepticism and impatience. "So, Michael," Thompson started, his voice clipped, "tell me about your leadership experience. What makes you think you can handle the pressure here?" Michael met his gaze steadily. "During my time at Ridgeway Consulting, I led a team of 15 on a project that increased our clients' revenue by 30% within 6 months. We faced tight deadlines and shifting priorities, but through clear communication and delegation, we delivered results on time." Thompson's eyes narrowed slightly, but he said nothing. "Impressive," he muttered, flipping a page. "And how do you handle conflict within a team? This is a fast-paced environment. People don't always get along." Michael nodded, understanding the subtext. "I believe conflict can be productive if managed well. I encourage open dialogue and active listening. On one project, Two key team members had opposing views. I facilitated meetings where each could voice concerns, which ultimately led to a stronger, more creative solution. There was a pause, and Michael sensed a flicker of something in Thompson's eyes, perhaps reluctant respect. But then the tone shifted. Thompson leaned back, crossing his arms. I see you have an extensive list of achievements, but this company has a specific culture. We value fit just as much as skill. How do you think you'll adapt? Michael's chest tightened. Fit. A word often loaded with unspoken meanings. He chose his words carefully. I'm adaptable and open-minded. I believe diversity strengthens a company, and I'm eager to contribute not just my skills, but also my perspective. Thompson's lips pressed into a thin line. As the questions continued, subtle microaggressions, Peppy, read the conversation. Thompson occasionally interrupted, dismissing some of Michael's examples as interesting, but not quite aligned with our current direction. His gaze occasionally flicked to Michael's skin rather than his face. Inside, Michael fought a swirl of emotions: frustration, sadness, and doubt. Was his skin coloring every interaction? Was the work he had poured himself into dismissed before even being fully considered? But he held firm. He reminded himself of the countless hours of preparation, the sacrifices made. He believed his skills would speak louder than prejudice. Still, the tension grew. At one point, Thompson sighed audibly. You have a strong resume, Michael, but sometimes what looks good on paper doesn't translate here. This role requires someone who can blend seamlessly with the team. Michael paused, the sting of that comment sharp. He wondered if blend was code for conformity, to fit a certain image, to silence parts of himself. Despite the setbacks, he pressed on, answering questions with calm and clarity, determined not to let the invisible walls close in. As the interview wound toward its end, Michael caught a glimpse of Thompson finally picking up the resume again, this time with more attention. Have you ever faced a moment where your worth was questioned just because of who you are? Where the gap between your true abilities and others' perceptions felt impossible to bridge? Michael's story is one many know too well, but the hardest moments often lead to the most powerful revelations. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Mr. Thompson picked up the resume in earnest. Not just a cursory glance this time, he leaned forward, his brow furrowing as his eyes scanned the pages. Michael noticed the shift immediately. The executive's fingers, which had been tapping impatiently against the desk minutes earlier, now stilled. His eyes darted across the lines of text, pausing here, narrowing there. Silence. Michael sat quietly, steadying his breath, feeling the tension swell in the room. For the first time since he'd walked through the door, he sensed Thompson seeing him. Not the surface, not the skin, but the substance. You could almost hear the gears turning in Thompson's head. Wait, Thompson muttered, eyes locking on a particular line. You worked on the Grayson merger? The multi-billion-dollar deal last year? Michael nodded calmly. Yes, I was one of the lead strategists. My team was responsible for the financial risk analysis that allowed the client to renegotiate terms and save over $100 million. Thompson's eyes widened slightly. His jaw tightened, a flicker of something passing across his face. Disbelief, perhaps? Or was it grudging respect? And this? Thompson flipped another page. You designed the AI framework for the logistics company? The one that made headlines for cutting delivery times by 40%. Michael's voice remained steady, his confidence unwavering. Correct. I led the project from prototype to implementation. managing cross-functional teams across 3 countries. For a moment, Thompson seemed at a loss for words. He sat back, staring at the resume as if it had suddenly transformed into something unrecognizable, something he hadn't expected. Inside, Michael felt the surge of emotion rise, the exhaustion of constantly having to prove himself, the weight of carrying not just his own hopes, but those of every person who had been dismissed before being understood. And yet, he didn't let the emotion crack his composure. Thompson's next question came, softer, almost hesitant. How did you manage to get this much done at your age? Michael allowed himself the faintest smile. Hard work, sir. A lot of it. The emotional peak hung heavy in the air, the stark contrast between how the conversation began and where it now stood, from a dismissed handshake to begrudging, unavoidable respect. For the first time, Michael saw something shift in Thompson's eyes. No longer indifference, no longer doubt, something closer to realization, an uncomfortable recognition that his initial judgment had been wrong. The room felt different now. The walls hadn't disappeared, but they'd cracked, and both men could feel it. Mr. Thompson cleared his throat. Well, Michael, he began, voice softer now, no longer the sharp, clipped tone from before. I have to admit, your resume is impressive, very impressive. Michael gave a polite nod, though inside his feelings were tangled. Vindication warmed his chest. He had proven his worth, shattered the executive's doubts. And yet, beneath that satisfaction was a deeper ache, the lingering sting from how this meeting had started, from the coldness of a man who hadn't even wanted to shake his hand. Thompson leaned forward, steepling his fingers. We'd like to bring you in for the next round, he said, almost grudgingly. You'd be a strong fit for our senior strategy team. There it was, the opportunity Michael had worked so hard for. But it came wrapped not in genuine welcome, but in reluctant acceptance. A subtle but undeniable difference. Michael thanked him calmly, keeping his expression professional. But in the quiet of his mind, the thoughts pressed in. Why did it take a resume to prove I belonged here? Why wasn't my handshake enough? The broader meaning hung heavy. How many times had brilliant, hard-working people been passed over because of a name, a face, a skin color? How many boardrooms and offices had closed their doors before someone even had a chance to show their worth? As the narrator, I can tell you this. Racism isn't always loud. It isn't always a slur or a headline. Often, it's subtle. A look, a hesitation, a handshake withheld. Michael left that office knowing he had cracked open one door. But the fight was far from over. Systemic bias doesn't crumble in one interview. It lingers in hiring decisions, in promotion rooms, in the quiet spaces where powerful people decide who fits and who doesn't. And yet, there was hope. When Michael walked out of that glass tower, his phone buzzed with messages from friends, family, mentors, the community that had lifted him up every step of the way. They celebrated his victory, small as it was. They reminded him that his success wasn't just his own. It was part of a broader fight, part of the slow, steady work of breaking down barriers. Michael smiled as he walked, feeling both the weight of the journey and the strength of those walking it beside him. Because even in the face of cold boardrooms and reluctant respect, resilience has power. And Michael knew this was only the beginning. As Michael walked down the crowded Chicago street, resume folder tucked under his arm, a swirl of emotions followed him like a shadow. Yes, he had earned the next round. Yes, he had impressed the man who just minutes earlier wouldn't even extend a hand. But the bigger truth couldn't be shaken. Why did it take undeniable proof on paper for someone to look past his skin? This story isn't just about one man, one handshake, or one interview. It's about the subtle, everyday forms of racism that weave quietly through our workplaces, our schools, our communities. It's about the moments that are easy to dismiss or overlook, the assumptions made before a word is spoken, the biases that shape who gets welcomed and who gets questioned. But above all, it's about perseverance. It's about standing tall even when you feel the weight of judgment pressing down on you. It's about knowing your worth even when the world tries to shrink you down. Change doesn't come in one dramatic sweep. It starts in moments like these. Moments where unfairness is recognized, where someone refuses to shrink, where dignity holds steady in the face of bias. Moments where we demand justice, not just for ourselves, but for everyone who follows after. So I want to ask you, have you ever been judged unfairly? Have you ever walked into a room where you felt unseen, unheard, or underestimated? How did you respond? What can we together do to break down these barriers, not just in corporate offices, but in every part of our lives? This isn't just Michael's story. It's a story that belongs to anyone who's ever been told, in small or large ways, that they don't belong. And it's a call to all of us to listen, to learn, and to do better. Because real change, lasting change, starts when we choose to see each other fully, beyond the surface, beyond the assumptions, and together we can make sure no one has to prove their worth before they're treated with respect. If you believe everyone deserves to be treated with fairness and respect, no matter their race, background, or story, then go ahead and hit that like button right now. Your support helps us shine a light on stories that too often go unheard. We'd love to hear from you. Have you ever experienced racism in the workplace? Or maybe you witnessed a moment that opened your eyes to how deep these biases run. Share your story or your thoughts in the comments below. This is a safe space to be heard, to reflect, and to connect. And if this story moved you even just a little, subscribe to our channel. We bring you real, powerful stories every week. Stories that speak to the heart and challenge the world around us. So make sure your notifications are on. From all of us here, thank you. Thank you for watching, for listening, and for standing against racism with us. Every view, every comment, and every share helps build a world where stories like Michael's lead not just to awareness, but to real change.